I'm proud to announce we have selected a team by Stony Brook University to deliver the New York Climate Exchange, and I deserve a round of applause.
The New York Climate Exchange on Governor's Island is a major victory for solving the problems brought on by climate change.
The exchange is going to create a place where ideas come to life and where hopeful solutions to the global climate crisis can flourish.
It will be the place where leading academic institutions share research and ideas to expedite results, where our corporate partners will help to develop a culture of innovation that encourages researchers to create practical solutions that can be brought to market.
And this is not just something we work on today. It is a generational challenge. And I'm pleased that the Simons Foundation and Bloomberg Philanthropies are able to help create something where really it is the next generation who will be carrying the flame on this.
We are excited about this collaboration for a better future. We are excited about the potential it brings to further development our own school's growth and the potential it brings to all students of New York City.
You are the Green Dream Team, and you know who you are, and we thank you for the opportunities that we see in front of us.
I am inspired by what we will achieve together, and I can't wait for the New York Climate Exchange to get to work. Thank you.
And now, welcome today's moderator for our town hall, Stony Brook alum Craig Allen. Craig is the chief meteorologist for WCBS Radio 880 and one of the most authoritative weather sources in the New York tri-state area.
Thank you. Welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. I am indeed so proud to be here with all of you. I am an alum. I go back to the John Toll days, the very first president of this part of the university. At the time, this university had something known as the Bridge to Nowhere. I don't know how many of you know that story, but it went across the road, which is now Toll Road, and from the Union, and was supposed to connect to the library. Never did, and it's just amazing to think that in those days we were mud and a bridge to nowhere, and now I come back to this university, and I come back frequently to help out some of the students too, and I just get to see how Stony Brook is now building bridges all across the country, all across the world right now, and I think it is just an absolutely wonderful thing and an absolute terrific credit to our panelists here in what I'm going to be talking about for this afternoon. So welcome, everybody. And I want to welcome, of course, our president, Maurie McInnis. To her left is Jed Shivers. He's our senior vice president for finance and administration. Jed joined Stony Brook. He just came to Stony Brook this past July from the University of North Dakota, and he has oversight for budget, financial planning, analysis, human resources, information technology, enterprise risk management, parking and transportation, facilities, and services. Congratulations on a job well done and a lot of it. To his left, I was so thrilled to meet Kevin Reed because Kevin, like me, I think, has that geeky meteorology feeling that really, really helped this project along. Kevin's an associate dean and an associate professor at Stony Brook University's School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences, which was not here when I was here. We did not even have a meteorology degree at that time, so I went through the Earth and Space Sciences department. Kevin has been the faculty lead on the project, and he's focused on working with and leading the other academic community and industry partners to develop the programming components of this great factor, the exchange. And Keith O'Connor, to his left. Keith represents a team of architects, engineers, and planners from SOM, standing for Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, and they have been developing the plan for this project, the Exchange. Keith is a principal, and he leads SOM's city design practice in New York and Washington, D.C. And he brings 2.5 decades of experience in this public, private, and nonprofit sector, and has spent years working to plan and design high-profile public-owned projects that lie at the intersection of natural, cultural, and historic resources. So thank the panel for being here. Your questions are going to be answered by these wonderful people. Let's start this off right now with our President, Maurie McInnis. She is going to talk to you about the project and start off our town hall. Maurie.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So glad to have so many of you here on such an exciting day for Stony Brook. So setting ambitious goals, responding to society's greatest needs, and propelling our university to even higher levels of excellence, this is the Stony Brook way, and it's why we're here today. So a lot of this is still sinking in, just a little bit more than 24 hours after the official announcement from New York City's Mayor Eric Adams that Stony Brook's historic plan to reimagine Governor's Island as an international hub for convening climate science research and solutions was revealed as the winner. So we've proven a lot of things in this process. We've proven that we have the courage and the heart to take on bold challenges, that we are unafraid to take risks, that we are dedicated to making a change in our community in New York and in the world beyond. So I think we've long known this about ourselves, and what's really exciting, now the rest of the world is learning that too. Stony Brook University has deep roots in and a deep appreciation for being an agent of change. And the faculty, staff, and students at this institution in those early years, such as when you were here, Craig, helped build one of the nation's great research universities, and one that's been growing in stature and impact ever since. Many critical discoveries have marked our history, and today we are building off that legacy to define something new. And that's just part of who we are as Stony Brook universities. So in the 1960s, it was the era of the moonshot. And like our colleagues did back then, we too feel a great sense of urgency for change today. The last decade, I think, has made us all really acutely aware of critical challenges and especially at the forefront of those, climate change. So Stony Brook, over the last couple of years, working collaboratively with many partners, has answered that call. And we will be taking our place as a global convener at the forefront of climate solutions as the anchor institution for the Climate Science Solutions Center on Governor's Island. The New York Climate Exchange will allow us to work together, unbound by the usual constraints and silos that we often find in higher education research and innovation. We're going to reach beyond those limitations to bring together the world's most innovative organizations across sectors to problem solve and turn solutions into action. And it's already bringing us into conversation with many supporters and donors we would never have had access to previously. So two of the world's leading philanthropic organizations, the Simons Foundation and Bloomberg Philanthropies, have pledged a combined $150 million in support of the New York Climate Exchange. So not only are these remarkably generous gifts going to help fuel our ambitions in building the exchange, but they really are a ringing endorsement from some of the world's leading philanthropies of the work we're doing at Stony Brook University. So this is just another proof point of what it means to be a flagship. And this will be the way in which others see us, and it really is a new day for Stony Brook. So we're excited about this moment. We're excited about the momentum this brings to us, and now it's time to get to work.
So, you know how proud I am of this institution, and for all these years, it's just been something that I've always wanted to come back to, and I watched it grow, and it continues to grow. And I want you to tell us now, what does it mean for Stony Brook, and we'll go over some of the things that you just talked about, to be the anchor institution?
Yeah, I mean, it means so much. This is really should be a very proud day for all Seawolves. This is a historic moment. And part of it is because of this unprecedented level of collaboration with the 45 partners who are part of the New York Climate Exchange. Because working together across sectors is going to give us a real chance to make real progress, to really make a difference on this very immediate problem facing all of us. Working together, beginning with community input, alongside higher education researchers, alongside corporations who can help us accelerate and get things to market, alongside public policymakers who are going to actually need to make the laws and the rules and the regulations to be able to implement some of these changes. We are going to be able to make progress on making the change that this world needs.
Now, there was a lot of competition when this started, and so what do you think makes Stony Brook the right institution to anchor this?
Yeah, so many things. In my time at this institution, I've been so impressed by the deep commitment that our faculty, our staff, and our students have to being able to make a change in the world. And that's deeply embedded in our DNA. As a public institution, we are at the forefront of discovery and innovation, but we're also often thinking about, and how is that discovery going to make a change in the world? Early on, about 2 years ago, a number of our faculty and staff got together and began talking about this opportunity. And they were immediately excited about it and began developing this vision. And we brought more and more partners to the table to talk with us. And what came out of this was a really exciting vision, one that New York City and the Trust for Governors Island clearly got excited by as well, because that's why we're here as the anchor institution. And from the beginning, the idea was always about, how are we going to make meaningful change? We've been talking about climate change as a society now for a few decades, right? And we've really struggled to make real progress, right? And here in this collaborative partnership, we think we've got the opportunity to bring everybody together, working together in new ways.
That was going to be the next question. What are we bringing, what are we giving, and what are we giving up at the same time?
Yeah, so much of what we're bringing is the work that our faculty and students have been doing for a very long time. Whether it is in SOMAS and the work we do in storm prediction and climate change and mitigation, or whether it's the work we do in the Renaissance School of Medicine around health disparities and the social determinants of health, or the work we do in the Advanced Energy and Research Center around green energy, battery technology, wind energy, grid integration, whether it's the work that many of our faculty are doing at Brookhaven National Labs in energy efficiency, in conservation, in renewable energies, and nanotechnologies. I mean, so much of that we bring to the table. We also bring this attitude of valuing our communities and wanting our communities to be a part of this from the beginning. And I think part of what was really so energizing about our proposal in comparison to many of the others was that we had so many community groups as part of it. And we've already done the hard work to build the partnerships, and we've figured out how to co-design and co-create together, listening to the community so that what we design actually will work in the communities that are most impacted by climate change.
And it's not just our communities right now. It's so many partners that we have that have joined in with us now. I mean, partners from weather, itself, to the philanthropies. Do you want to go into that and tell more about our partnerships?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Could we go to the slide that
some
shows some of our partners?
Are amazing.
It's a really, really remarkable group. And so let me talk to you a little bit about how these partnerships came together, because they've really grown and evolved over the 2 years. And some of them have been there from day one, and others have come on more recently. As you can see in the list, we have a number of higher educational institutions that are clearly a really important part of this, because for all the research that we already do that is related to the work that we're ultimately going to need to do, no one higher education institution does it all, right? So by bringing other partners with us, it just means we can deepen and broaden our impact. Leveraging in areas where we have overlaps and filling in places where it may be an area we don't already work on. We have really important corporate partners with us as well who were committed to helping us think through and build what we're calling a research and technology accelerator. Because all too often in higher ed, it can be slow to get from a research idea to actually getting it to implementation. But by having corporate partners from the very beginning who can help us from the beginning think about very practical solutions and then work with us on development and commercialization through to innovation and implementation, that's great. But at the heart of all of this are our community partners. Because we know in our world, on our planet, the impacts of climate change are most acutely felt in many of our underserved and socioeconomically challenged communities. And too often, the things we design aren't working in those communities. So by having them at the table with us from the very beginning, we think and believe, and we already have seen good signs of it, that we're going to come up with solutions that are going to work better in those communities, both in New York City and far beyond. Right? So the idea is let's work across sector. And of course, the city is one of our important public policy partners, but then of course, we'll be working with other public policy makers as we design real solutions to hopefully get to the kind of real change.
To get to where we are going,
Yeah.
and the light at the end of the tunnel here from Mother Earth.
Yes.
I was thinking also, though, now I've watched Stony Brook grow, and I've watched the meteorology department grow, which, as I said, was not here in my day, and so I see all the funding that has been fantastic for this university. But now we're going to be putting a lot of these funds over towards this brand new partnership. And I think I've already heard a few things. You may have even seen a few things on social media. There are people that are wondering, is this going to affect Stony Brook here in Stony Brook? And what will happen to the university here or the SOMAS program? Explain a little bit about that, and because the philanthropists behind this, as you said, $150 million is just phenomenal. So we need to know how that's going to work.
Sure, and I'm so glad you asked that question because I know it's a question on the minds of many, right? So the first thing let's talk about is the structure of this entity that we keep referring to, the New York Climate Exchange, right? We are part of that in the sense that we will be a member of the New York Climate Exchange, but so are our partners. Very important to understand that the New York Climate Exchange is a separate 501c3.
Okay.
Okay? And I'm going to turn it over to my finance guru
Sure.
to help you understand how this is structured and how we're going to pay for all this.
How are we going to do this?
How we're going to do this.
Thanks.
Jed, over to you.
Thank you. Hard act to follow, obviously, but I'll do my best. So I just want to get out some baseline concepts here. And I think the sort of the first one is, as you said, President McInnis, the Climate Exchange is a separate and distinct charitable organization licensed to do business in the state of New York. It's going to have its own assets. It's going to have its own liabilities. It's going to have its own management and its own board of directors, which represent the participating higher education institutions, corporations, and other organizations. None of those entities represented by the board will have equity or liability in the New York Climate Exchange. Stony Brook's role will be as the principal appointing authority. It will assume that role for at least the first 25 years, and as such will have exactly 50%, but not a controlling interest on the board and of the voting seats. Initially, Stony Brook seats will be 7, with the remaining 7 coming from the other participating organizations. In addition, the Stony Brook University president will be chairman of the board for the first 2 3-year terms, and then, as it happens, I, as a result of my role as the SVP here and longitudinal involvement in the budget and finance aspects of the project, have been elected to serve as its first treasurer.
Okay, and how are these board members going to be elected or selected?
So,
And are there any terms, term limits or whatever? There is, okay.
yes. So, as I noted, Stony Brook will appoint 7 of the 14 seats. The Stony Brook president will serve as the chair for 2 consecutive 3-year terms. Entities who can appoint voting or non-voting directors, including the PAA, are what are called the appointing authorities. The appointment of these entities were established based upon the original members who formed the New York Climate Exchange. There are also a series of non-voting directors. After the first 5 years, the terms of office for the directors will be 5 years. During the first 5 years, the directors will be divided into 5 classes. Sorry if this gets a little wonky. And their terms will expire according to a preset schedule. And then lastly, as is common with charitable not-for-profit entities, there'll be board officers. So there'll be a chair, there'll be a vice chair, a treasurer, a secretary, and eventually an immediate past chair. And just as an item of interest, no director or officer will receive any compensation for these duties.
Okay. Because I was going to ask after that was, how much is our university investing in this? Is there a breakdown?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and I have to say, and I don't mean to be glib, is the answer to your question is 0.
Okay.
And
explain.
I shall. So, and what that means is no Stony Brook University funds shall be utilized as part of the capital that needs to be raised to do the design or the construction work or support the initial operating expenses. So that's 0. Once the New York Climate Exchange is operational, no Stony Brook University funds can be used to, and I'll put here in quotes, bail out the New York Climate Exchange in case it gets into financial difficulty. And as I think about it, and Kevin can comment on this further, the only financial interaction that I actually can envision is when the facility is up and running, it's open, available to its user constituents, and in that case, there's going to be some sort of a financial relationship between the university as it places faculty there and has students there, et cetera, and the exchange itself. And that's really it. There is no way, I've said this quite frequently, the way to think about this in terms of the initial capital raise and the inability of ourselves to provide any bailout type of ongoing operating support is just think of it as an impermeable wall between Stony Brook University and the New York Climate Exchange.
Excellent, okay. Let's get to the science part of this now
Yes.
with Kevin. We know how Stony Brook was 30 years ago, a little more than that maybe. But and obviously, obviously it has grown to this point now, as I was mentioning before, where we have an accredited meteorology degree. The students here are so into it, and we're trying to work so much with students in getting into the field of meteorology. So now, let's go forward with this project and go 10 years into the future. And this is why this is a good question for you, Kevin. The New York Climate Exchange that we are now going to be a part of, what does it look like programming-wise, and what is it going to do for us over the next 10 years?
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to, of course, see a little bit about this when we get into the physical plan. So maybe as I start to plant some of these seeds, you can then start to visualize it here in a few minutes. But, you know, really it's focused on kind of end-to-end kind of research and technology acceleration and incubation, right? So how do we take ideas all the way from the really, you know, over coffee discussions, all the way to a potential solution that's scalable for not only New York City communities, but inevitably, you know, Long Island communities and beyond. And so really it's, you know, what you can imagine is what we are already doing in a lot of our research and what our students are already involved with in internships already here on Long Island. Imagine that being, you know, expanded into New York City. There's other aspects of workforce training, right, with the partnerships that we've already heard about, right? So scaling the existing programs so that the green workforce can really be implemented sooner and faster, because we really need this in order for the state of New York to meet its climate goals. And then, of course, you can imagine that, you know, similar to if you just walk outside these doors right now, right in between classes, that it'll be a hustling, bustling center in which you'll have students and graduate students, right, going around the center, whether it's they're taking classes, whether it's a hands-on learning opportunity, or whether it's they come for a day for an internship experience. And so the idea is that a lot of what we happen on our campus already will be happening there, but the difference is it'll be happening for what I would call spurts of time, right? So nobody is going to necessarily be there 100% of the time. The idea is you might have a research project that's using a space. A student might be spending a semester there as part of kind of like a study abroad program. Or it could be that you've just gone there for the day for some recreation, which is what Governor's Island is already used for, over 1 million visitors a year. And maybe you'll happen into some information about climate change, climate impacts, as well as the broad range of solutions that are needed.
Did anyone here realize what Governor's Island looks like? I didn't realize how much is on that island. I always thought of it as just an island out there, and I see so much of it and how much of it is going to be developed. It's pretty remarkable what's already there.
And so, if I could just add one additional point, which is, Jed said there'll be no money, right? No investment from Stony Brook in that sense. But what Stony Brook is going to get to invest, right, is our ideas, our passions, and really, as the president already mentioned, right, our problem-solving skills, right? And those are the things that we get to invest in Governor's Island.
Okay, so that brings up a very good point, and it should be noted, obviously, that there is a huge difference between meteorology and climatology, and we are dealing with climate, not necessarily meteorology in this particular case here for the Climate Exchange. And climate obviously stands for long-term. Weather changes, not just day-to-day storms here, a storm there, or how many tornadoes formed, we all know that this year already has had the highest number of tornadoes. We've already had extreme heat, fires. That is not climatology in its greatest sense. But now that we're talking about climate, what programs do we already have here now? What do you envision developing with our partners here in this initiative? Will we be leaning towards meteorology? Will we be leaning more towards the climatology? And over these 10 years, where do we go?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if we just already look at, if we had that list back up of our partners, right? We heard a lot about the community aspect, and we heard a lot about industry partners. But we're on campus right now, and a lot of it also comes from our academic partners. And those partnerships that we've developed over the last few years are necessary to get at the climate aspects, right? Which are long-term, as you mentioned, impacts that are broad. When we think about why these partners, to answer these type of questions, it's really related to the fact that, as mentioned earlier, climate change is a significant challenge for the globe, right? That in order to solve the problems that we need, in order to have the variety of lived experiences to inform the solutions, we really need a broad group of stakeholders and partners. And through working with these partners, we'll be able to, for example, collaborate on new ideas, right? And so some of the stuff you could already start to imagine to happen in the coming years is actually just to build on those collaborations, right? To form formal relationships with our peers in order to, really help to amplify and scale the types of solutions that we're already working on campus. So if we're doing something, here, for example, focused on, let's say, coastal restoration, we can learn from our University of Washington partners on what works in the Pacific Northwest. We can learn from our Oxford partners of what might be working well in the UK. And the idea is when you start to convene and exchange that transfer of knowledge, you can really help to really innovate on solutions.
Excellent. And do we have a very quick answer? I mean, do we have students already lined up for this project here?
Yeah, I mean, the idea, so we don't have specific students lined up, right? But the idea is that we have students that are interested in these areas all the way, whether they're an English major, pre-med, engineering. The idea is that our students, from my experience of teaching a large class on campus, is that they are passionate about understanding the climate impacts and how to be part of the solution.
That's what Stony Brook has been all about, right? Let's move on now to Keith O'Connor from SOM. And obviously, you must be thrilled. This is an amazing, amazing project. And we've been seeing some of the renderings and some of the drawings that have been posted up there, which is really kind of cool. Tell us what your overarching goal is when you're creating this design for the exchange. What are we looking at and what are we looking for?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, fundamentally, one of the things that we wanted to do was to have the place, the exchange, be grounded in the island, right? So its rich history, its unique identity, its character, something that is unique and situated and can be only in that place. But we also really want it to be a new beacon. Climate science, research, innovation, exchange, experimentation. So what you're seeing here, in addition to some of the historic preservation and adaptive reuse, is a set of buildings that really frame views that embrace the landscape. So you see here one that faces to the east, to the waterfront, to Brooklyn. The other one faces to the north, to the island, the historic district, to lower Manhattan. And really, the exchange lives at this place between new and old, between historic and contemporary. And the idea is to create a place where the buildings and the landscape are highly visible, they're welcoming, they embrace and draw people in. And we really are creating this wonderful place of exchange, a real place of purpose.
Right. Right. We can go to the next slide here because now, obviously, this is the Center for Climate Solutions in here. So we want to explain to the audience what is the sustainability goals of these buildings here and how are you going to plan to achieve those?
So it is slated to be one of the most ambitious net zero campuses in the nation. There's a whole range of things that we're going to be doing from, as you see on the screen here, 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, triple net zero, so net zero in waste, in water, in energy. The first large-scale commercial mass timber building in New York City, meeting living building challenge standards, a whole range of things. But beyond any single building, one of the objectives is the buildings, the landscape, and the systems all coming together to demonstrate how you build a sustainable long-term campus. And so in addition to the team at SOM, we've got a variety of partners that we've brought in. So Burrell Happold, who's a leading global firm focusing in sustainable engineering. We've got MNLA, which is Matthews Nielsen Landscape Architects, who's a local landscape architect. They, along with West State, are actually responsible for the extraordinary contemporary park that's at Governor's Island now. And we've got Langen, who really focuses in coastal resiliency and in civil infrastructure.
Extremely, obviously very ambitious. Give us an example of the energy. Where's the energy coming from here?
So one of the things that you're seeing here, so it's slated to be an all-electric, 100% electric campus. All of the energy needed will be generated on site. So there's things in the design to be very efficient in the systems, in the buildings. But you're seeing here 142,000 square feet of photovoltaics, of solar panels. Some of that will be on historic buildings. A huge piece of it, 92,000 square feet, will be on this fantastic, undulating, sinuous roof of solar panels that unifies these two buildings. And One of the things for us really is to demonstrate that sustainability can and should be beautiful in addition to being highly functional.
I'm looking at the greenery up there as well that you've got coming or draping down the sides, and I love seeing something like that as well. So now that we know what this looks like and what it's going to be, and you are going to hold on to some of the old, I mean, we're not taking down any buildings or anything like that, right? We're holding on to what we've got.
Correct.
The next question then becomes not only just the sustainability, but the landscape design. When we had Hurricane Sandy, obviously, the forward right quadrant of a hurricane brings in the worst tidal flooding, the worst storm surge. And lower Manhattan obviously got that, New York Harbor. So they explain how we're going to get all these buildings up to code and how do we keep it, from flooding. I mean, our whole purpose is to try to help this situation.
Yeah. Let me say, just before I get to the landscape, say
Sure.
one more thing just about the buildings. So
Okay.
as you said, there's historic buildings, there's Liggett Hall, there's a theater, there's an old officers building. Historic preservation, renovation, adaptive reuse of those, it's about 170,000 square feet of that work. 230,000 square feet in two main buildings, what you're seeing on the screen. So on the right side, an 8-story academic tower, on the left side, a 4-story research building. So these two new buildings, in addition to the historic buildings, that really accommodate the program and all of the education, the training, the gathering, and most importantly, perhaps, the research that is not only done there, but is displayed there. So people can come and see it and engage and learn from it in the buildings and in the landscape. Mm-hmm. And if you just go to the next slide, I can talk about, Craig, your question about, so one of the things that we're going to do that we think is quite extraordinary with the landscape, for those of you who've been there, there's a 2-mile esplanade that runs around the entire island. There's a hard seawall that is the edge. We're actually going to take one section of that and take this hard armored seawall, and we're going to make it a living landscape. We're going to make it a soft ecological edge. So tidal pools, areas of inundation, rock outcroppings, all of this to address sea level rise, to address tidal action, to address storm surge, and to do it in a way where the researchers at the exchange can test that, can monitor that, can share it, and the public, open, accessible, they can come and see it, they can experience it. So we're really looking at a whole range of techniques that actually work for Governor's Island and that also people can learn from and we can deploy throughout the coast of New York City.
Which is wonderful. That was going to be my final question to you, too, is that once we get all this done, and I believe it's 2028?
Anticipated.
Okay, anticipated.
We're going to go with anticipated.
Is it still going to be open to the public, or is it just for faculty and students?
It is. So interestingly, 172 acres, Governor's Island, it is public. One of the great commitments that Stony Brook has made is to make all of the exchange public. So in addition to what's open now, it's going to be 4.5 acres of new public open space. So you've got buildings, you've got landscape. You can see in the image on the top left, when you get off the ferry and you arrive, you see the buildings, you see the solar canopy, it draws you in and invites us. And so a huge piece of the design is making sure that all of these spaces are welcoming, are open, are accessible, are comfortable. So comfortable places to sit and places of shade, so you can sit with a colleague, meet with a student, meet with a researcher in a great environment, and talk all about, as you see, some of the places, the research that's going on, and really use the physical plan as a manifestation of the idea of exchange.
And as we heard yesterday, that it's going to be, they're going to try to bring ferry service in every 15 minutes or so. I mean, that's getting the public there as fast as we possibly can. I mean, you must be so proud right now. Right?
We have an
you must be
amazing
so
team.
happy.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I'm going to let you answer the final question, which was, I already jumped ahead to that, but what is the timeline on this now?
Yeah, so while it's going to take a couple more years probably of design and development before we're really ready to break ground, which we anticipate doing in 2025, the work of the exchange will begin almost immediately, right? Because so much, while the exchange is a physical place, and that's an enormously important part of this, it's also an ethos. It's also a way of working. And so the work with our partners will begin immediately as we work on developing programmings for K-12 outreach, as we work on scaling up some of the green workforce development work that's already going on with some of our partners, and we help them extend and expand that impact. As our researchers across our institutions begin working together to think about collaborative research projects, maybe having curricular talks, like a lot of this is still to be formed now that we have been selected from the energy, excitement, and ideas that are going to come from our faculty, staff, and students, right? But our plan is we start to work almost immediately. So anticipated groundbreaking 2025, anticipated opening of the climate exchange on Governor's Island as a working campus in 2028.
In 2028, something like that. Okay, so it's now, you've got the floor.
Yep.
Wrap this up. Tell us what exactly is the goal.
Yeah.
What do we hope to achieve by all of this?
Yeah.
And how proud you are of this institution.
Yeah, so enormously proud of this institution and the team that's been working on this, and the energy and enthusiasm and ideas that have come to us from across campus. We all agree that climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our time. And in addition to continuing the work of what can we do to mitigate climate change, we also need to develop a whole bunch of solutions for what is our changing planet, and for thinking very differently and understanding the ways in which climate change are having a disparate impact on communities around the world. So, greatest challenge of our time. It needs bold and innovative solutions. We believe that we at Stony Brook, in combination with our partners, are the ones who are best situated across sectors to come up with those bold and innovative solutions.
So what this is doing actually is that we've got a lot of solutions or a lot of potential solutions, but we're not all putting it together. This brings it all together,
Yes.
so everybody can bring it to the table. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. You know what, folks? We are going to open this up to a few questions. We will be able to take questions. There's microphones on both sides of the auditorium here. If anybody has any questions for anyone in the panel, please come on up, and if you can. It may be tough to get through the rows. If you, okay, if I could, yeah, can you come on up? Okay.
So the question was what types of labs we're going to have, and I'll turn this one over to Kevin.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and the short answer is sort of, right? And what I mean by that is because the New York Climate Exchange is meant to be adaptable to what the needs are and what the challenges and solutions that might be tested at any one point, is that initially the lab space will be, very, interchangeable, right? So in the sense that there are certain things that we do, for example, on campus that require very specific specifications for our laboratories, right? So you could imagine, I guess I'll give the example of battery research, right? So that type of work has, a lot of specifications, and there's no reason for us to do that on Governor's Island when we can do that right here on campus. But when there's work that can particularly make use of, the coastal urban environments, or can make use of space directly on the island to demonstrate and test a new technology, that's the type of laboratory space that'll be available. And so, right, so you could imagine there might be mostly dry labs for that type of work, maybe a few user facilities that'll be related to a maker space or a mechanical shop to help with some of that research. But really what the eventual research labs on the island will be informed by those of you in the room, will be informed by our partners in the coming years as we start to really help design the specifics of inside those buildings that we just saw.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Up front.
Hi, Craig. My name is Jonathan Sanders. I teach weathercasting at the School of Journalism and Communication with my partners at SOMAS, and I have to tell you that all of our students get jobs. We have people all across the United States. If we had 15 more students, we'd have 15 more weathercasters across the country. My question for my friend, the Admiral of our flagship school, who are now I'm going to call Governor Admiral. Governor Admiral, we're going to be having a lot of people going back and forth, especially in the build-up phases. We're the bell ringer of this new climate center. Have you thought about how we're going to keep green in doing that? Is the Long Island Railroad going to do something to help our students and faculty and researchers going back and forth? Is a local car dealership going to give us a bunch of electric vans so that we can go back and forth and charge them up right there?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question, Jonathan. As always, you are always thinking creatively ahead, and you've given us a great number of ideas that we can go out and pursue. So details on all of that forthcoming, but I love some of what you've suggested.
It's a great idea. Any other questions?
All right, I'm Chang Gi-jung at Physics and Astronomy. First of all, I really like to congratulate you, Maurie, for your leadership and vision and audacity to go against other prominent institutions. So that's fantastic. My question is that this can, I hope this does not become more separated from Stony Brook. If we are financially separating, but it could mean also somehow it got separated from the Stony Brook itself. So my question here is that what is the plan to maximize our benefit from this exchange at Stony Brook in terms of program development, in terms of new areas of research? You know, that has to commensurate such a way that we can maximally utilize these things for our university benefit. Do you have any long-term vision set up in how the SOMAS or whatever the place to see that through?
Yeah, so Chunky, thank you for that. I really think that's about all of us, right? This is about the kinds of conversations that hopefully everybody will be engaging in their departments. It will be the kind of conversations that I hope faculty will be having with their deans, with the academic leadership. In many ways, it's on us, right? We are 50% of the board seats on the New York Climate Exchange. The board of directors will be setting a high-level vision. We have all these different sort of scientific advisory groups that are an important part of how we've set up the exchange. And we'll be asking our faculty who wish to be involved to be on those committees. We can make of this what we want. So it is really on our academic community to constantly, right? This is a many decade project that will be ongoing long after all of us are no longer active in our current roles. And so we're going to need the faculty and the staff of this and students of this institution to continually help define what this opportunity can mean for Stony Brook University. So we're doing exactly as you say in maximizing that opportunity.
Okay, additional questions?
I have one. I just got here, just completed 1 month. I'm very proud. And congratulations to everybody that had a role in making this happen. It's the New York Climate Exchange, but is this open to the rest of the world internationally? Is there going to be any participation from the rest of the world? If anybody can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is a public place, and it will be open to everybody. Some of the specifics of who is doing research there, that's probably more limited to our many different partner institutions. Students who can sort of study abroad there will probably begin with students from our own institutions, but in the same way that many people from other institutions participate in somebody else's study abroad program, depending on demand, we'll see where that goes. but it is going to be an open public place that actually has the intention very much of inviting the public and educating the public, giving them access not only to how we can live in a green and sustained way, what systems look like, what buildings look like, what different landscapes look like for coastal resiliency, but there'll also be all kinds of didactic stuff that's meant to engage with the public, because that's the way we're going to get change in this world, is if we figure out how we're going to take these ideas and broadly disseminate them. So we'd love everybody to come to Governor's Island.
Thank you.
Maurie, this is an extraordinary time for us at Stony Brook. I mean, what a marvelous opportunity. And I was just wondering, of course, with my bias, if some of these ideas that are going to be developed on Governor's Island could be proofed in Africa. And, you know, we have 2 satellite campuses in Africa and in Kenya and Madagascar, and we're certainly welcome to be the experimental cases for some of these great ideas.
Yeah, Pat, thank you so much for that question. And, you know, we just might have thought about that and been really excited. And it's one of the reasons why we think we are such the perfect anchor institution. The work that you are already doing in Madagascar, the work that is already happening in Kenya, the work of our other faculty who are working in biodiversity. We have such a constellation of great faculty doing research in areas that are so directly tied to climate change that it makes the exchange. Yes, it's a physical place on Governor's Island. And why does that matter? It matters because New York has the power to convene. Sure. Right? It is the greatest city in the world, as we all know well, right? And it brings people together in a way that nowhere else in the world does. But that doesn't mean the work we're doing there is limited to there, right? It becomes the proving ground, it becomes the convener and the demonstration place, but the work should be spread everywhere. And obviously, the work that our faculty are already doing abroad is enormously an important piece of that.
Okay.
Well, this is really exciting, and this is trying to staff up an enormous nonprofit in a very short period of time. And maybe you could just speak to who will make those decisions. I mean, you mentioned the board of directors,
right.
But who beneath that is going to be tapping on heads? These are career-making opportunities for leadership, for faculty. So maybe you just speak through the process by which that will be staffed up in such a short period of time.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that is the work of implementation, and it's going to start, tomorrow, practically. We've got a lot of hires that the exchange needs to make, and those staff members will be employed by the exchange and supported by the philanthropic dollars that we have raised. So we will very quickly be hiring, an executive director, development individuals, CFOs. Yes. I mean, I don't remember what all is on the first list, but we will very quickly be hiring that staff. And those decisions will be made by a search committee of the New York Climate Exchange Board of Directors, which obviously includes a number of us who are on that board. So that's how it will get started. And then once we have a bulk of staff there, then they do it, right? And they'll be the ones that are further staffing up the organization.
In TV, if a producer starts giving you this sign, it means that you better finish up. So we're going to finish up, and our president has a wonderful, what?
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Sure.
just a very quick closing.
A very quick closing for all of you. It's a nice little event we're going to celebrate now.
Exactly. So if I could get up on the screen, I'm sure many of you have questions we've not gotten to today, or you're going to think of some after that. So please visit our website, stonybrook.edu/theexchange. There is also a place there where you can submit questions, and we can then add those to the FAQs, right? or suggestions, ideas. Keep them coming. And now I'd like to invite everybody to join me on the Academic Mall for a celebration. We will be gathering by the administration fountain near the Stoller Steps. And we have some great stuff for all of the community. So please join us.
Thank our panelists. And thank all of you for coming.